So I'm here to talk about Jimmy Butler. There's a situation going on in Minnesota right now that could very well have implications on whether the Timberwolves make the playoffs this year. As seen last year, the Timberwolves were just not good without Jimmy Butler. I think he played 60 something games, came back for the last few, and they fought for a playoff spot in the last game of the season. And the fact that they fell apart without Jimmy Butler does not bode well. You've got Wiggins and Towns, who are your two best players outside of Jimmy Butler, and they've just been disappointing. Well, more Wiggins than Towns, to be honest with you. Wiggins has gotten worse since the beginning of his playing career. Well, not really that much so. He's gotten worse since last year, which is completely expected for his numbers to go down with the arrival of a star like Jimmy Butler. But he dropped 6 less points per game and 3 less free throws, but he also dropped 12%. He dropped down to 64% on his free throws. 33% from 3 on 4 attempts. Is that what you want from the guy who's supposed to be next to you with Towns? No, that's not at all what you want. You want him to be improving every year. Wiggins has all around been a disappointment. He hasn't brought a whole lot of success to the Wolves. Granted, they haven't had any success in the last 12 years. It's good that they finally got to the playoffs, but if Jimmy Butler leaves, I'm just not sure that they can. Actually, I'm almost positive that they will not make the playoffs if Jimmy Butler leaves. So let's talk about some potential trade packages for Jimmy Butler. There has been the Heat. There's been some interest from the Heat. This annoyed me when I first heard about it. It was Jimmy Butler for Josh Richardson and a protected first. That's what we think it was. It was getting finalized. The deal was going through. I mean, there was probably more just for cap. I don't know who would be involved for that. Maybe Tyler Johnson or somebody like that. But Minnesota asked for more right at the end. And that made Miami upset. So deal was called off. And it's been a mess ever since. Alright, now let's talk about a package the Rockets could have done for Jimmy Butler. I've heard things like PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon and some picks for Jimmy Butler. And since Minnesota is not about that rebuild, and by Minnesota, I mean Thibodeau, I think that's probably the best package that they could get from anybody, because Courtney Lee and Frank Ntilikina from the Knicks is not going to do them. It's not going to do anything for them, I don't think. I like Ntilikina a lot, and he has a lot of potential, but for the win now mentality that Minnesota has, I don't think that's right for them. I don't think they should trade him to the Clippers. I don't think they should trade him to the Nets. Nor do I think any of those teams should trade for him. I think the Rockets should trade for him. I think it makes more sense for the Rockets, but I think Miami has a decent shot too. I understand it more for the Rockets because Jimmy Butler could very well help them beat the Warriors. If Chris Paul stays healthy, then I think that if they almost beat the Warriors in 6 last year, then they can do it this year with a healthy Chris Paul, James Harden, Carmelo Anthony. I think he'll play well in Houston. Jimmy Butler and Clint Capella. That's a pretty good starting 5. And you've got a pretty decent bench too. I think that would give the Rockets a real shot at beating the Warriors. Now, whether they face Toronto or Boston in the finals, I think they'll have a very good chance against those two, but I think it would give the Rockets the edge. And I think Minnesota, Eric Gordon and PJ Tucker would, and future draft picks, like maybe 1 first or something like that. I think that would be probably the best win now move that they could do right now. Because then you've got Teague, Eric Gordon, Andrew Wiggins, PJ Tucker or Taj Gibson, and then Cat. That's your starting lineup. Then you got Derrick Rose off the bench, PJ Tucker or Taj Gibson. I think that would still be a pretty good win now move. Whether the Rockets will do that, whether the Rockets actually want to do that, that is still up for debate. But I think it would be a very good move for the Rockets, and I think Chris Paul and James Harden could kind of control Jimmy Butler so he doesn't go nuts on everybody again like he has been for the last 3 years on everybody. But I think Minnesota needs to get him out of there and get some decent return for him too. So I think the Rockets should definitely trade for Jimmy Butler.